The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the next hour. I promise you, it's going to be the most exciting hour professionally and technically for you for today. My name is Sanjay Bansal. I'm the global lead for Platform Alliances, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Alex Edelstein, who is one of our leading product managers at Salesforce. And Alex works for Lightning Flows. So for the next hour or so, Alex is going to spend a lot of time around some of the features and functionalities that have come out in Summer 18. He's going to talk a little bit about our pilots that are coming up in the near future. And most importantly, it's going to be a lot of demos, a lot of code snippets that will be shown to you. We're going to try and make things available for you from a sample perspective. You guys, a lot of you all have already attended some of these sessions before. Ask those fantastic questions because that's what makes this so interactive and so much fun. So with that, if you, Alex, if you want to move to the next slide. Real quick, our famous forward-looking statement. I want all of y'all to get really excited about what we have to show we hear. Anything that's not GA, please make sure that your customers are not making plans of buying the product based on something that's GA forward-facing. So thank you once again, everybody. Ask those questions. We'll address them towards the end. Alex, do your magic.
All right, good to be here this morning, everyone. You guys are one of my favorite audiences because of your technical sophistication and your ability to put flow to use in all sorts of interesting ways. I'm going to show a bunch of different things today and try and basically have a minimum of slides and a maximum of demos and code. And I want to start thematically by talking about flow as AppDev. This is something that the Flow team is really focusing on more, and we want to make sure that you're aware of is the work that we're doing to make Flow a more effective environment to build solutions and applications. And some of the things you see on the screen here are features that we have shipped over the last year and a half, and starting with the invocable action interface that turned Apex code modules into declarative blocks that can be pulled into a flow, and then really hitting stride with reusable Lightning screen components that it's hard for me to believe that's only about a year old. You're going to see a lot of examples of the power of that into this presentation. Translation workbench support, the new debugger. These are examples of things that were just kind of, you know, if we were going to someone and saying, hey, you should really build some of your solution in Flow and distribute it in Flow. These are things that someone might say, well, that's a big gap. You know, I need that in order to be able to do part of what my mission critical work in Flow. And so we're trying to fill in those gaps. And the debugger, which has just gone GA, is the most exciting and fun one yet. Local actions fills another gap and creates a real opportunity to deploy JavaScript as easily as you deploy Apex. And then towards a little later in presentation, I'll fill in some of the right side of this and show you some of the stuff on the roadmap. Let's dive into some demos and look at some real stuff. I'm going to start with a demonstration here, and what you're going to see in the early parts of it are several different features at work. You're going to see programmatic control of navigation. We also call that overrides. You're going to see local actions, and you're going to see custom screen components. And so let's go and take a look at what we can do here. So I'm going to go, and you can see I'm in Service Console now, but I'm actually going to go and I'm going to open up a community portal. So in this persona, I'm a dealer, and I'm talking to the company that makes the vehicles. And this is a regular portal page. It actually has a paused flow here, but I'm going to start a new flow from the repair request screen.
Alex,
and this is a flow.
My sincere apologies.
Yeah.
There are people who are complaining about the audio being dropped off. Just give me 15 seconds because I just checked on mine where I'm logged in as a participant and it seems to be okay.
I've got a backup mic I can try to use that's a little potentially more reliable. So let me try getting that.
No worries. Is anybody out there who can hear? Audio's fine. Fine at my end. Okay, I think you can continue. It sounds like there's some folks may be having issues. If you're on a VPN, on your company VPN, I would highly recommend for y'all to drop that. Maybe that could be causing it. But my apologies, everybody, for the interruption. Alex, I apologize for the flow that there you go, the flow that we interrupted. Go ahead, continue.
Stand by. Can you hear me?
Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, good. How's the audio quality? Everyone out there, chat in real quick. If let us know if the audio quality is solid or a problem.
We're getting a lot of yes, everything is good. So you're sounding great as usual, Alex. Let's keep the flow going.
Carry on. So what we're looking at here is a flow, and there's some things that are unconventional about it for people used to flows. There's no footer that's been suppressed with a checkbox, so that you don't have the traditional next and previous buttons. The vast bulk of just to shut up. The vast bulk of this flow is a single lightning component, and that single lightning component is using some images as static resources. And so we've got hover effects that take place here. And so I'm going to click on this wheel here, and that takes me to a second flow screen. So I'm in the flow. Now what you're looking at here are more lightning components that are available in the screen. So we start off here with dependent pick list. And this is a component that I actually installed into my org from the community. So there's components that we're building internally on an official basis, and there's also components that people are just contributing and making the source available, so you can look at the source and then install it into your org if you're comfortable. Here's a lookup component, and we'll talk more about that later. This is the lightning-based data table component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this break replacement. And so that's the procedure that's being requested by the dealer. And so that several things happened there under the covers. One of the things that happened was a repair procedure custom object was created, and 3 repair parts were created as well. And those parts are going to have to be ordered. However, we can go and we can look at the repair request. We're still in the flow, and this is a button. Buttons are new to flows. This is another use of the component interface. So when I click on this, it's going to take me straight to a record ID. That's a combination of using new flow navigation techniques and also flow finishing behavior, which is an effort of ours to make it more seamless when you finish a flow to take the user to the next location. So we're looking at this, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift Persona away from Community Cloud, and we're going to go and look at the Service Cloud. But before we do, so just to emphasize some of the things that you saw there, the programmatic control of navigation, let's take a look at how that was done. So I'm going to go and let us, I think I've got it over here. So we want to bring this up. So the way I'm going to drop into JavaScript, and you're going to be able to see how easy it was to take control of the navigation. So that particular component was called Car Problem Picker. And Car Problem Picker, you can see here, is where we are pulling some of those images. So here's the image that showed the wheels of the car, and then here we load a different image that shows those wheels with the blue background. And so you can see that there's some click events that are handling this. Now up here is where the navigation happens. So with just these 2 lines of JavaScript, I was able to completely control how we advance from the one screen to the next. And that really expands the toolkit of anyone using Flow. You can get out of the sort of linear next button, previous button, and do something a lot more creative. So that's the navigation that you saw. And that also shows some of how where you can use Lightning components. I'll point out this right here, implements Lightning available for flow screen. That's how you can take any Lightning component and have it available as something you can drag onto a flow screen and configure. So that's very powerful. All right, let's go back to our demo. So we are switching our persona over to our service console. And if we go and we look at our agent, you can see here that he is getting chatter posts. And so he got this chatter post right here 3 minutes ago that was created by that flow over on the community portal. And so he clicks on that, and he's got a repair procedure in front of him. We're using a data table. This is another flow. And these are the 3 repair parts that I mentioned were created as part of that repair request that happened over on the community portal. So what our operations guy is going to do now is he's got to order these parts. He's got to order these parts from different manufacturers. And you can see that we are in the platform. This is not something that actually even requires Service Cloud or Community Cloud. This is an example of a flow being done at a platform level. And it demonstrates how flow is really useful across the entire range of Salesforce solutions. Now, when he goes to select break disks, what you see here on the right is a next best action recommendation. And because this particular webinar is really focused on existing technology and how to use it, we're not going to talk too much about it, but hopefully at the end I'll be able to show you a few demos about this, because this is another product that I'm responsible for getting out there. And so this next best action was generated by a next best action strategy that looked at a whole bunch of factors about this customer, this case, and this repair. Has the potential to incorporate AI models and predictive intelligence and recommendations from other systems like Commerce Cloud, Einstein, and Interaction Studio. But in this case, we basically have a pretty simple solution here. Now, when a next best action recommendation is clicked upon, a Lightning flow is run. So you can think of next best action as a sort of front end for flow processes. And when I click on this, what happens is mainly behind the scenes is some orders are being done, some parts are being created, and as soon as this is done, you can see here that the manufacturer's been filled in, the part number's been filled in, the unit price has been filled in. And if we go back to our procedure, you can see that there's now one of these parts is ordered. Now I'm going to go on and order the second part here. And for this one, there's no recommendation. That's part of a good recommendation infrastructure. Sometimes you have a good recommendation, sometimes you don't. And if you don't want to make a bad recommendation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a flow from a quick action button here. And I am going to select my vendor manually instead of accepting the recommendation. Another example of a data table in use in a flow. And you can see how using a quick action allows you to pop a flow up modally and get some process done without losing the context of the underlying page. And so that quickly filled in as well. And that's great. And let me go back here and let's see what's left. And we've got one more part here to order. So let's order that. Click here, get some of Wayland Yutani's excellent brake rotors, and we are in pretty good shape here. So what I'm going to do, so we've got our parts ordered, and what happened when these parts were ordered was a request went out to a back-end Heroku-based service that we've used to model another sort of an enterprise partner. And let me show you kind of what I mean by that, because one of the things that this is designed to demonstrate is
how flow can be orchestrated and how multiple flows can be used to create a larger, more complex, more nimble business process. So we had the original community portal repair request. That generated 3 repair parts. And then at 3 different times, those parts were ordered. And one was ordered via one mechanism, one was ordered via another mechanism. Now, every time those parts get fulfilled, a process builder trigger exists, and it's looking for that example. So let's go and let's fulfill some of these. We're going to switch over from our console here. We're going to switch over to a completely different community portal. So here we are at one of the brake manufacturers. And you can see that here is an example of how a flow has been loaded into a iframe. Actually, this might just be a component. I'm not sure. So I'm going to take one of these components and I'm going to ship it. So this is a pretty ugly portal, but we just wanted to whip something up to make it clear that we're not in the same company anymore. So I'm going to ship this, and that shipped. Now that was actually a front-end web page. It was communicating with a Heroku Node.js based application. An example of how the Salesforce platform can integrate easily with a wide range of back-end technologies. And if I go, that's not where I want to go. I want to go right here. If I go over here, you can actually see this dot indicates that a platform event was received. So the Heroku app sent a platform event into Salesforce and basically said, I have fulfilled one of these products. And as a result, that product was changed in the Salesforce system. So an outside non-Salesforce thing happened, and Salesforce learned about that by a platform event. Very low impact, just takes a few lines of code to send a platform event to Salesforce. And then a process builder triggered on that and marked the appropriate record as fulfilled. And so we can go and we can ship another one of these parts at perhaps a different time. And likewise, that is also going to show up as fulfilled. And when I mentioned orchestration, one of the key elements of orchestration is allowing multiple things to happen in parallel. So until I shipped that third part, this procedure wasn't ready to begin. We needed to get all 3 parts fulfilled in the warehouse before we can actually start the work. So what we had was, we had a process builder that triggered every time a repair part is fulfilled. It checked, and it checked to see, are all 3 parts fulfilled? Is every part that's part of this repair procedure fulfilled? And only when that was done did we launch the final flow and sort of proceed on to the next thing. And you can see that one of the things that final flow did was it posted to Chatter. So this is a powerful example of how you can do richer business processes by taking smaller flows and actually linking them together with process builder and platform events and creating smarter and more intelligent business automation. So that second part of that demo, just to recap, you saw next best action, you saw quick action buttons being able to launch flows, and you saw this kind of orchestration of parallel flows, and you saw platform events playing a instrumental role in gluing together different small assemblies into a larger, more effective functionality. And let's move on and talk about some other technologies that you can put to use here. Collection services are some of the powerful declarative tools we make available for processing lists and sets and collections of records. We added a whole bunch of these, and this is something that is, list processing, not the most exciting topic in the world. Not probably what you woke up and said, hey, I can't wait till he gets to the list processing section. Although there's probably a few of you who are like, woohoo, list processing. So let me show you a demo of this. And the example, what we did, I built a little game and I needed a place to put it. So I put it on our insurer custom object and called it Words with Insurers. And this game is basically a game, and I'm about to ask you guys to participate. So those of you who are the kind of person who raises your hand in class when the teacher calls upon you, get ready to chat in, because what you need to do here in this game is you need to remove one letter from this word snowing, and it's got to still form a word. And we're going to do that. It has to work every time until we're down to one letter. So I'd like you to suggest for, chat in, what is the letter that I should remove? And Sanja, can you tell me what the first suggestion is?
Oh my God, they're coming in. All right. Okay, this N. How about N?
Okay, we're going to remove an N. So I'm going to remove the first N, and you see a couple things happened there. This is a flow. Again, it wasn't necessarily obvious as a flow until I went to the next screen. You didn't see the next previous buttons. I'm actually using that JavaScript technique that I showed earlier in this presentation to do navigation. These are Lightning components that were built and have been published for use. What's the next letter, Sanjay?
Rupesh asked for O.
We got an O. Okay, for that I will do remove at position 2. So you can see that, and so what I'm doing each one of these times is I'm actually using it's a flow, and I'm basically saying, using an assignment, using the assignment node, and you can see that I've got all of these tools that I can use to process my list of objects. What's the next one?
Valentina and Pat asked for a W.
We want a W. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything I can show that I haven't done here? Let's remove all matches of W. Okay, and next?
Okay, let's see. How about Pat asks for a G. Pat and Peter's asking for a G.
All right, for that we're going to remove everything after item N. And you get the idea. I'm going to move on. Great. So an easy example, and let's take a quick look so you can see how I created that. And we'll go into flow. And that one, I think, is that's the collection demo. Here we are. There's also a feature that a number of people, we didn't make a really big deal about, but a number of people have found it and been particularly pleased, and that is we've got an operator here where you can get a count of the number of items in a collection. You used to need to do some crazy formula stuff. So it's an interesting, one of the interesting things here is there's an interesting pattern. This is not your typical linear left to right flow. We've got everything sort of revolves around a single decision node. So what's happening is we go to the decision node, and then it actually goes to one of 6 or 7 different places, and then each of those places does an assignment. And then we go back, and you can see here's how we're doing, here's exactly what I was showing you, here's how the assignment works, and then we go back to the screen. So what we're doing is we're sort of looping around, and we are basically able to do the sort of clever, less linear stuff that you saw there. So that's kind of fun. That's Words with Insurers. got that what called decision-centric flow design. I mentioned the community and wanted to touch on this because this could be useful to you. We wanted to make it easy for people to publish Lightning components that they've built to work with Flow. Now, we recognize that not everyone is going to be comfortable deploying a unmanaged package that someone just says, hey, this works with your Salesforce kit. So we have a separate parallel process where we are working on taking these components, finding the most popular ones, and sort of making them official, bringing them in. So you can think of this as almost the unofficial flow site that you see here, which is right here. This is sort of the minor league, if you will, and you can go here and you can find the various components that I'm talking about. And in every case, the source code is available. So you can go and you can take a look at something like Image Button, which I'm about to demonstrate for you. And you can basically go and, you know what, I need to add a link for that. But essentially, the GitHub repository is right here, and you can see, you can actually pull the source down, look at it, feel comfortable with it, and change it and modify it. And all we ask is that you consider when you do change or modify any of these in the course of your work, that you consider filing a pull request and submitting your changes back so other people can benefit from it as well. And here's an example of how that process is creating some very nice positive feedback. Back in December, John Pipkin at OpFocus published a Lightning component. He wasn't even thinking about Flow. This particular Lightning component was developer only. But I was able to take that and create an unofficial Flow-enabled version. And that was done, that was talked about here. And on a blog post that I did. And that, you know, I got some responses like, yeah, it's pretty nice, but you can't do any filtering. Well, within a couple of months, Eric Smith and Kevin Hart, two independent members of the Flow community, had both submitted pull requests and basically provided two separate, distinct ways to do filtering on that lookup component. Kevin made it possible to apply arbitrary where clauses, and Eric provided a declarative way that you could filter on a particular field and even create dependencies between two lookups. And I'm pleased to announce that we are now working on sort of making this official. So it will just be there, available in a managed, fully integrated way in the next release. Now, of course, no promises. We can't always deliver as quickly as we say, but as you can see down here, this is the little internal ticket that we use at Salesforce when our internal developers are working on something. So that's kind of cool. Let's talk about another component. I mentioned image. Image is a lot of fun. I think this one is going to lead to a lot of fun. And so let me show you what we've got here. Here we have created this flow. And as a little side note, I wanted to point out the action list component here. This action list component is available to anyone in any app builder page. You can just drag it into a page, and it's sort of a quick launcher for flows. So it provides all access to all of your flows, and it also gives you status on flows that you have running and allows you to jump to them. It makes it easy, and you can see that it keeps track of certain flows that are using our stages functionality. It's taking advantage of that. It's making it possible so that somebody can track the stage of a particular flow. And in this case, let's go back to this image demo. So we created a Lightning, I created a Lightning component. This is still an unofficial component, and it's available in the unofficial forms that I mentioned before. And the goal here was to make it easier to put images into flows. Those of you who are serious flownatics already know of the sort of secret ways, the gnarly, hacky ways to put images into flows. We wanted to make it a little easier for everyone. So I've got a couple of Lightning components here. You can see that it's still in a flow. This doesn't look that great yet, so let's try and make this a little better. And let's take a look at what we're doing here. So we've got the flow right here, and I've got two Lightning components, and you can see that there's only one input right now, and that's the name of a static resource. So the way images and flows work is you first upload your image as a static resource, and then you simply give its name on the flow screen where you want to use this. And this component is called image flow screen component, or image FSC. So that's okay. Let's make this look a little better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into a let's see, I can't do that. I want to make this a little bigger, so okay, we're just going to go with that. So let's do this. So what we've done here is the change that I've made here is I've used CSS to specify the image width and height. And so what I'm doing is, this is confusing. Let's go back to this. I'm using something that's been around since I was at Netscape in 1995, and that is basic image CSS. And if you've done any web front-end programming, you're familiar with it. You can see that we have taken the ability to set the height and width on an image tag, and we've made that declaratively available in this Lightning component. And if we go and look, it's getting a little messy here. Let's go and take a look and see if we can dig down in here. And you can see that right here, what that did was it set the height and it set the width of this style string related to this image. So we are basically, you are basically able to do declarative web styling now using images in flows. So that is kind of powerful. And let us continue. So this is okay, except it kind of, because I was a little clumsy on I didn't preserve dimensions. It's a little messed up in its proportion, and it wasn't centered. So one of the things you want to do with something like this is center it. How did I center it? Well, that just took a couple more CSS commands. So margin, setting margin equals auto is how you basically center stuff. I have a way to specify whether I want the images to be block or inline. That's more CSS there. That's pretty good. And if you go inline, you can get stuff to be side by side. And I'm moving kind of quickly here, but there is a blog post that goes into more detail about this that you can find from the unofficial flow site that I pointed you at. Here we're maintaining proportionality using an old web technique, which is basically achieved by using both width and height and max width and max height. And that's kind of cool. And then the next thing we're going to do here is we've created next and back buttons out of images. So we're actually tying together the navigational functionality that we showed earlier with the exploded car diagram. When I click on this next button, it goes to the next screen. And when I click on previous, it goes back here, goes to the next screen, and I finish up. So just another example of how you can take advantage of the power of Lightning components. And I'll remind people at this point that almost everything that you're seeing here actually will work fine in Salesforce Classic if you create a visual force page and then insert the flow container into that visual force page. There's a few exceptions. Some of this automatic navigation where I click on something and it loads a page or goes to a record ID, that only works in full Lightning experience right now. But with that exception, pretty much everything else will work for you there as well. So let's drill a little into local actions. Local actions are the cousin, or maybe really the sibling, of the screen components that I've been showing you, where screen components take Lightning components and make them useful in visual forms on the screen. Local actions take Lightning components and make them usable as standalone chunks of flow functionality. Because you don't always want to do something visual. Sometimes you want to do something that's more processing, more back-end oriented. So a couple examples of what you can do here: you can access remote data via JavaScript. And because you're using JavaScript, it's executing inside the security envelope of the organization, and you can access local on-premises data or private clouds sometimes in a more efficient manner than if you go out through traditional Apex and holes in the firewall. You can also interact with browser features like show toast and new tab, creating a new tab, loading a page into it, because JavaScript can do that. JavaScript and the browser are on very good terms, and you can get that navigation behavior that I was showing you. So I'll give you an example of a slide that is clipped. This is an example of a slide that is clipped. You do not want this in your presentations. But I will also give you an example of what this represents, which is our direct data query use. In the upper left, you see an example. You essentially see how Salesforce has traditionally provided external connectivity integration. Set of very powerful features, starting with Apex. You can do all sorts of things in Apex. The new external services registrations, and Salesforce Connect, which with its external objects. All good. Direct data queries adds this ability to use JavaScript. So to give you an example of that, I have a SQL database that is okay, you know what, that would really help if I, instead of using the screenshot, I used the real thing. Okay, so what we have here is a SQL tool, and I'm making a direct query to a database of social security numbers. And this is up on AWS. It could be anywhere. I picked AWS. I picked Python to access it, and I picked their API gateway to provide a front-end endpoint to it. And because I am cheap, I only use their free tier, and then we are now taking 25 seconds or so to spin up their free tier. But when that's finished, this query will refresh. And what you can see here is we've got some social security numbers, and we have some external IDs. And so I'm going to go to a flow, and let's go to the flow that you may be familiar with. This is from our spring demo. We're going to go and create a close credit account, and this is we don't have time to go through the details of this particular slide, but it's got a lot, this particular demo and flow. It's got a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of videos posted where we roll people through this, and this particular knowledge article that was brought up by a local action doing a load of a URL into a web page. But what I want to do is I want to zip ahead and get to this screen. So we want to do some ID verification. So from the point of view of the service agent and their customer, the customer's provided the last 4 digits. And okay, good. We got our database reset. All right, so good. Now we're spun up. You can see I'm doing my query. It's pulling in. So this system, basically, I'm going to enter 4 digits, 9234. That's the correct value. In fact, let's try an incorrect value first. That's being sent by a local action, and that local action is going to basically make a query. It's going to check. It's going to, what's being passed up is both this is the ID number of 4325. That sits on Lauren Boyle's contact. So if we look at her contact, you can see here's the 4325. So that's being passed into the JavaScript, up to AWS, up to the SQL Server, and the SQL Server, the Python script is basically returning invalid. That's all it's returning. It's not returning the full social security number. This social security number is not available to the flow and never gets available to the flow. And then the flow just tells the agent, no, that's not going to work. So if we enter the correct value, then that works. And so if we go and look at what's going on there, let's peep inside this particular flow. So what I did to enable that was I created a simple local action, and this local action is available in its source code. Let's see, that is good old closed credit account. When you're a product manager, you get very, very familiar with some of these demos. And so the source code for this local action I'm showing you is also available in a couple different repositories. That one's actually available in our official force.com repository, and it's right here. This is where that local action has been pulled in. I dragged it in from my local action section right here, and it's basically taking as an input the contact's external Oracle ID, and it's returning a last 4 digits that I can compare to see if it matches. I go on. If it doesn't match, I provide an error message. And if we go to our unofficial, if you go to the unofficial site, like I said, this is also available in our official force.com repository. But here is the source code to this and the details. And I really, you know what? I really have to make those links to this repository a little clearer. Anyways, in the repository, we have a whole bunch of these local actions, and you can see if we drill into it. One thing you can see here is we had to create a CSP trusted site. That's a bit of Salesforce security. And if we go in here, you can see that we declared our attributes. And here in the controller, we created an invoke function. So the way that you take over processing from a flow is you add a function called invoke. And you can see that this is basically calling a helper function. When it gets a promise callback, it basically sets the value of the return. So not a lot happening in a controller, which is how a good controller should be. Let me backtrack to here and point out, notice that this says available for flow actions. The one I was showing you before was available for flow screens. So when you add the available for flow actions marker to a Lightning component, that's what makes it show up in the palette of the Flow Cloudflow Designer and the upcoming Flow Builder. That's what it makes it show up right there. So all the magic is happening in the helper. And you can see here that we are doing it asynchronously, which is always a best practice. You don't have to, but we recommend it. We create a promise here. We generate an HTTP request. I'm completely punting on doing anything involving auth here, like an OAuth session, that can all be set up. You've probably done it in JavaScript many times. When we'll try and get a demo up with some sample code for that. But basically, here we're opening up the pipe to a public endpoint we've created. We're passing in a parameter that the flow gave us. We're sending it. And then when the callback comes in, we're parsing the response text. We're resolving it into a result. That gets set to the attribute. The attribute gets read by flow, and it can be used downstream. Very, very exciting if you are like me. So let's keep moving. That was local actions, brand new GA as of summer release. I haven't had a chance to show you my favorite summer feature, debugger. Usually it comes up because I'm trying to do more live stuff. So let us, don't want to jump to that quite yet. Let us go into one of our flows. And so here, let's take this image demo. So we've got this image demo. Notice the debug button right here. If I click debug now, it gives me, first it lets me set some input variables. This particular flow doesn't have any input variables. So we're gonna run it, and you can see that as I page through it, it is providing a stream of useful information. It's showing me what element of the flow I'm at. It's showing me runtime values. It's showing me what button was selected. When I get to Lightning components, it shows me what input values I provided and what outputs are coming back. The image component doesn't actually currently provide any outputs, and that's very clear there. And so on and so forth. And this gives you a lot of useful data. Now, let's maybe pick something that is a little more complex. And you can see here, I can set a value right here. This speeds up the sort of test debug cycle from, in my experience, about 33%, just because I don't have to save and activate, save and run, do all that kind of thing. So you could paste in an ID right here. You could provide a value for a last 4 digits. And here you can see whether we're seeing the value of variables. This is where it gets very useful. You can learn things like, oh, my record, I expected a record ID to be passed in. I've got null for my record ID. Something's wrong there. It tells you exactly when a query fails to find records. That is very useful. A lot of time, I would say at least 25% of my debugging sessions in Flow end in me realizing that something either didn't find any records or it didn't find the correct records. So debugger, extremely useful, highly recommended, very easy to get started with. Just click on the button and start going with it. A real achievement by Jason and Bill and the Flow Engine team. So let us keep going. So I'm getting, I think, let's see, deployment, you know what, I'm going to skip over that because that's roadmap stuff, and just in the interest of keeping things focused on the here and now, I know we're running a little low on time. The integration solution now runs this full spectrum. You've seen Lightning components, you're familiar with Apex classes. I demonstrated platform events, didn't have this time to really show you the power of external service registrations. We're putting together some cool new demos for that. This kind of shows you what external service registrations can do. You increasingly can go and simply download, copy and paste a text file for every API that's a company like Adyen or AWS, Amadeus. This is just one of the library websites that are out there that are publishing APIs in the form of these open API text files. This used to be called Swagger, now it's called Open API. When you take one of those, you can paste it into an external registration. So what I'll briefly show you, we don't have time to do the full schmata, but if you go here to external services, you find an ability to create these external services. So for example, here is an external service that communicates with a public Heroku endpoint that I've set up. And I got on to named credentials. I actually clicked on the credential. The actual service is right here. I pasted this in. In one paste, I got full support for a whole bunch of input variables and a whole bunch of output variables. When you register an external service registration, this is where you paste that schema. So I could say my, let's say my Dropbox, does he capitalize the B? I don't think he capitalized the B. My Dropbox APIs. And then you can provide your Dropbox token and credentials in the form of a named credential. You paste the schema right in here, and then you get something that you can just drag into a flow. Very powerful. We're going to be, now that that's GA, we're going to be building more cool demos for that. Platform events, as I showed you, you can trigger flows with an incoming event that you publish from a non-Salesforce system. You can also have a flow publish an event that you subscribe to from an external system. So if you, if you're running a web service, say, you invest one time in figuring out how to subscribe to platform events, that only takes like 5 or 6 lines of code. Now you can deploy flows and for that matter, you can deploy Apex classes that publish these events and signal out to your system. You could use that for logging. You could use that for alerting. You could use that for diagnostics. Talked about local actions. This is how we introduce Apex, good old Apex classes. Let's briefly talk about roadmap. I started out the presentation by talking about how we're really committed to AppDev. We got a lot of stuff coming up in 2018 to fulfill that. We're working on deploy as active. This is part and related to SFDX optimization. If you haven't started playing with SFDX, go do that trailhead. Probably the single most useful trailhead you will do in Salesforce. If you do anything involved in writing code in Salesforce, you actually can't deploy easily deploy flows as active, as change sets. There's some other things that have to do with the fact that Flow has had its own version control for years. We needed to have version control in Flow because if you create a new version of a flow, we got to make sure your old version's still running in case there's any in progress flows that are still in process. However, SFDX is part of the transition to source-based version control, Git-based version control. Very, very powerful. We want to enable you to use flows in all of your packages, in all of your applications. So we're going to make sure that you can deploy flows and have them active automatically. And related to that, which you can't quite see here on the right, is being able to create customizable flows from managed packages. So what we're going to be delivering there is the ability that you can package up a flow as part of your application. You can deploy it. Users can use it. Then users can customize it. And the way we're going to enable that is they're going to be able to essentially clone the flow, copy on edit the flow, and use their copy with their modification, which is incredibly important for flows because so much of flows needs to be customizable to work in the organization to pick up the right token or to pick up the right name or the right incoming variable. And when that's copied, you're still going to have the managed package. So you're still going to have that template, and you're still going to be able, as an integrator or a consultant or an ISV, to push updates to the template without breaking their ability to copy and create custom versions. So that's coming down the road too. We are working on no fewer than 10 official new screen components. Some of the ones that you can find today in the unofficial community sources are going to be made official. Some of the ones that are coming are new. We're doing some very exciting stuff with the record, with the input form, input name, and input address, which are huge shortcuts for creating flow screens. We're packaging up different navigation options to give you more flow navigations. We're going to package up that image and CSS capability you saw. And then a little further on the horizon, we are doing some work deep down in the core to be able to enable flows to fully engage with Apex classes so that you can create a rich Apex class with children, with nesting of types, and then you can fully engage with that in Flow. So Flow can, for example, sit between Lightning components and Apex classes as a first-class participant in Apex manipulation. Why is that useful? You're going to be able to create your powerful Apex classes as part of your integrations, but you're also going to be able to create declarative flows that can use those Apex classes and require less effort to modify and update. So in the last few minutes, I want to, it's clear that we're not going to have time for questions live. I apologize for that, but post your questions to chat and I will answer all of them. And what's the best place to answer them? I will answer them in the visual workflow Trailblazer community. So if you are not familiar with that,
Alex, we also have a partner community where people are being directed. So finish your last part of the demo, and then
perfect.
You still got 240 people out here waiting to listen to you. So if you have time to answer some questions,
all right,
really
let's finish the
it.
demo.
Yeah,
great. So next best action. Let's just jump into some demonstration of next best action. And what next best action means, what we're building is you're getting a teaser here. We're actually going to announce this next best action in just a few days, and as part of a package of very exciting Einstein related technologies. And what next best action is a framework for taking intelligence from a lot of sources that range from basic business rules to highly sophisticated AI predictive models, and creating a unified way to integrate, sort, and order recommendations and then present them efficiently in Salesforce presentation places. Here's a presentation place. It's a community cloud page. This is a Lightning component that is showing the results of running an NBA strategy. When I click on one of these, as I mentioned earlier, it runs a Lightning flow. So this is a conventional Lightning flow that this self-service user is able to follow. This takes advantage of another roadmap feature I'll mention in passing, which is an upcoming ability for guest users to use flows. That is being driven by our desire to make flows more useful for guest users. So here, let's see, let's switch personas again to a Service Cloud example. And let's go look, where is my favorite case? So a case was created as a result of that trouble ticket. And on the right, you can see recommendations. Look at it, you'll see that only one recommendation is showing, collect payment. Why is that happening? Well, it turns out that there is a property on the contact called payment status. Now, in fairness, you probably wouldn't actually store payment status directly on a contact object, but I am going to update her payment status from delinquent to okay. You could see the pop-up of that happened there. That was a local action in action in a flow, and you can see that the recommendation changed, and now it's reflecting this urgent trouble ticket. Where is that coming from? Well, let's take a look at something that you probably were wondering, what the heck is that, when I accidentally flashed it earlier in the demo. This is our pilot version of the building tools for next best action strategies. So what we have here is a strategy that's loading propositions into the system, then it's sorting and filtering them, and then the results are getting displayed there. And so each of these propositions has an associated flow with it. So for example, if we go and we look at this proposition, these are all propositions, and you can see right here, I have it pointing at a flow called order refrigerant. So we've got that going on there. This is where that dispatch refrigerant was taking place. And if I was to, let's go and we can go here, we can change the, we're fast forwarding a couple days. We are changing the condition that the refrigerant has been dispatched. That is all good. We go back here and you can see that once again, the recommendations are changing. Now it's a bunch of upsells. There's a 0% financing upsell here. That one is only happening because our contact has a good credit. Now, the credit score is not in Salesforce. The credit score is in a different system. So how is this useful little filter able to find out what the credit score is to determine whether or not to show that proposition and its subsequent ordering flow? Well, it's accessing an Apex class via the same tool that Flow uses to pull in those blocks of Apex functionality. It's using an external connection. It's pointing at the Apex class, and just like you do in Flow, you can pass it some input arguments and you get back some outputs. So the Flow, so that Apex class executes, it can do all that processing capability, and so on and so forth. And as you would hope, it's very easy here to move stuff around. So for example, if I wanted to take the dispatch and make sure that that always happened, I could move it right up to here. That's all it takes. It's actually saving and deploying the metadata here in the background of this particular case, and that would take effect immediately. I don't have more time here, but you'll be hearing, there'll be a lot more materials once Next Best Action is announced for you to learn about. We're very eager for our partners to get involved with this. We're looking for partners for both Flow and for Next Best Action. I want to give you a call to action, which is this. We are starting our Dreamforce planning. If you remember Dreamforce last year, there were, I think, maybe 6 different flow-oriented sessions where we were able to get one of our partners up on stage, and we were able to highlight their use of Flow with a Salesforce customer. We got the Salesforce customers up on stage. So we love doing that. So if you have any interest in working with some, particularly if you want to run with some of this newer Flow technology, because we love showing the new stuff. If you want to run with any of the stuff that we have shown here in this presentation, and you have a customer who you think would like to demo this, doesn't have to go straight to production, perfectly okay being a sandbox, but we want involvement of the customer. That's how I can convince the marketing people to get you up on stage with some really good quality slots. So if you are interested, let the partner guys know, let me know, let the flow guys know, and let's get some conversations going. We would love to lavish some technical support on you to help you build some really killer uses of all of this new flow tech, and really get you some exposure and show you at the very leading edge of what we believe more and more is going to be seen as the most productive way to develop applications on Salesforce. And so with that, thank you very much. Appreciate your attention. Post the questions into chat, and I will get them onto the partner community where you can see the answers. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Alex, that was just fantastic. It is amazing the amount of positive feedback that's coming your way. You are awesome, but I mean, all the audience, all of y'all that are out there, thank you so much. Thursday, Lightning internals. We have someone from engineering who's going to give you a behind-the-scenes look on Lightning. It's going to be awesome. I've heard the internal presentation. I convinced this person to come out and speak with us on Thursday. Next Tuesday, Greg Ruiz, the godfather of Lightning-based components, is going to talk about all the exciting things that are coming up on Lightning-based components. Next Thursday, we're going to have Roke Lynch, who's in the audience right now. I call him the ninja of flows. He's going to come and talk about his experience as a consultant, as he's out in the field and talking to customers about him. And then many more to come. Follow me on the partner community, sftc.co/everythingflows. The recording is going to be there. If you can please put your questions, Alex Arnab will address them. We'll try to get you answers as fast as possible. Thank you again so much for everybody for the time. Alex Arnab, you guys always rock. The audience, y'all are the best. Thank you so much.